Welcome to Midlife Matters. I'm Marie, and each week I'm joined by my friends Julie and Mindy to talk about all the topics keeping women in the middle years up at night. Today we're talking about avoiding anger, resentment, and worry. Join us as we discuss ways we're trying to dial back these emotions more quickly. Not an easy task, but one that's worth the effort for sure. Let's get started. Listeners, today we're discussing chapters 7 and 8 in our monthly book series, Happy School by Julie Gordon. And if you're new to this series, don't turn off the podcast because you do not need to be reading the book to follow along. You don't need to have read one word of this book in order to enjoy our podcast episodes. But we are doing one episode a month, and today we're up to chapters 7 and 8, which discuss avoiding anger and resentment, which I don't know who among us doesn't deal with these two emotions. And each chapter in this book is leading us to the subtitle of the book, which is Where Women Learn the Secrets to Overcoming Discouragement and Worry. So again, no worries if you're just joining in, because we're making sure that each episode and chapter can stand alone. So Julie and Mindy, are you excited to talk about overcoming anger, resentment, and worry? That's another thing that we had to kind of think about this month. So there were a lot of hard ones. Did you guys feel like they were hard?
Yeah, chapter 8 included worry and fear. So I was like, oh, we're getting a little close to home here.
Yeah, at least we don't have to, I'd like to have an avoidance thing going on right now to avoid this conversation, avoid dealing with these things.
I know. It's definitely not a fun subject to bring up because, one of the questions is, what do you get offended at? Well, if you start thinking about what you get offended at, then you start to think about being offended. Or if you have to answer, what makes you angry, then you start thinking about being angry, and all of a sudden you're, in a bad mood.
Right. Hopefully we can get through this without being offended or angry.
or offending or making any of our listeners angry.
That's true.
This is a tightrope episode to walk.
I know. Yes. I know. I'll be looking at our reviews after this.
But yeah, so we've talked about a lot of different uncomfortable emotions. Like last month was self-pity.
Oh, yeah.
But I do feel like this was the hardest one so far. And Julie always comes up with the questions for these books. And she started out right off the bat.
Bam.
With offended. So she said, did you pay attention this month to how often you get offended? Did anybody keep a running tally?
Are you kidding me? Julie asked the question. Julie can go first.
Yeah, Julie, do you have something to share with us?
Oh, thanks. Yeah. Yes, I did. And I realized, okay, it happens pretty often. So I definitely recognized it. And I thought, well, that's good just to recognize it. Okay, wait a minute. Because she talks about, just like with every other emotion in the book and every other thought, we have a choice with how we respond. And I don't have to be offended. So it was at least good to recognize it. And it's funny because her strategy later for how to deal with offenses, I thought, well, I'm thinking about all these offenses so that I really let them go, or if I'm still thinking about them and I can talk about them.
True.
Where he kind of brings it all back up again. So
I know. Right. Yeah. Definitely wish that we had that ability to deal with something, then erase it from our memory. That would be a good ability to have.
We have nothing to talk about today.
Right.
It's all gone.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't remember.
How about you, Mindy? Did you find that you were offended more often than you would have thought at the beginning of the month when you really started thinking about it?
Yes, because I feel that I do have some strategies to let certain offenses go. So some things are easier to let go than others. And so it surprised me that I did have more darts. Can I go ahead and say that? I did have more darts kind of hitting me that I was like, oh yeah, that offended me, but I'm really not, I don't care. I don't really care about that. Whatevs.
Okay. So you were letting it pass through you more,
but there are more, it happens. There are more darts than you realize.
Yeah.
And then there's certain things that I had a harder time saying whatevs.
Yeah. Well, then she hit us off with another whammy question. What kind of things offend you? Okay, Julie, you have to lead on this because this is a very personal question.
Oh, okay. Well, the thing that stuck out in my mind was one of those, not a big personal offense. It wasn't by anybody I knew. Mm-hmm. But I thought, okay, did I let this pass through me? Or am I still offended? Because I'm going to tell you the story. So I'm going to get all worked up over it again. But I went to get some landscaping stuff with my mom, and she said, let's go get our potting soil at Dollar General because it'll be cheaper. So we drive up to Dollar General, and all their potting soil is outside the building in the parking lot stacked up. No prices are on any of the potting soil. So I go in and get in line, and there's about 100-year-old man working the register. So he's very slow. Oh, and I patiently wait for him. And when I ask him the price, he doesn't know. So he just leaves the register. Like, he doesn't say anything. So I think, oh, he's going to go outside and look. No, he goes to the back of the store to get someone else. And she comes up and says, what do you need? And I said, oh, I just am curious about the potting soil. Like, how much is it? Because there were different size bags, like different brands and different sizes. And she rolled her eyes at me and said, really? She goes, you could have just brought that in and scanned it.
Huh? Oh, Julie.
And I said,
you high maintenance woman.
I said, well, I'm with my 85-year-old mom. These bags are heavy, and I would have had to have brought them all in. Like, I don't know which one I want yet, Mm-hmm. And she just threw out a price. And I said, well, that's, how much is the other one? Like, she was very unhelpful and very upset that
you offended her.
I offended her. Yes. So yes, that wasn't a life altering thing, but I told 3 or 4 people about it afterwards.
She told me about it.
And I'm now telling you again.
And will you ever go back there?
Or I won't ask a price.
I only shop for small liftable items from Dollar General now.
Yeah. So we haven't talked about yet her strategy of letting these darts pass through you as if you're like a cloud of smoke, not letting them land on you. But obviously I let that land because I'm still talking about it.
Yeah.
But I need to talk about it for the podcast. So maybe
That's right. Okay. That's right. Yeah, are we all sharing when we're offended? Because
I want to know when you're offended, Mindy. No. Yeah, I want to know.
I don't know what category that would fit in. Maybe just rudeness. Rudeness offends me. Unhelpfulness. Kind of being taken advantage of is offensive. Being dismissed or ignored is offensive.
My family members always say, Mom, you always say this, but I hate it when they insult my intelligence. And that's what that woman was doing. Like, she made you seem like you were too stupid to bring the bags
to figure it out.
Yeah, like, no, that wasn't the problem. It's not that you don't know that you could bring something up and have it scanned. It's that it's really heavy and there's several bags, and it was a logical thing to go in there and say, how much is your mulch out front?
Yeah.
So maybe that's what you're offended at, insulting your intelligence, Julie.
Okay. Yeah. I didn't know how to categorize that, but you're probably
right. Mindy, do you have anything to share?
I'll just add to that list. If I feel like my intelligence is being insulted, but also if I feel like they're calling me like a big baby, or like I'm or like I'm weak. If they act like I just am not tough enough to do something, that actually really irritates me.
So what would be an example of that?
Well, okay. I more have an example of when people just don't take simple instructions. Like, this is so silly, yet it like really irritated me. And it was, we went to get ice cream the other day. And I have a particular way that I eat my ice cream, and I don't eat ice cream often. So when I order it, I'm like, it's an experience. And I'm like, I actually want this ice cream cone today, but I always get chocolate strawberry. And I always say chocolate on the bottom because I want to end with chocolate, but I still want the strawberry. So here's just a high maintenance thing. They put them in the wrong order the other day. I really had a hard time. I was like, I literally never get ice cream. I'm finally eating ice cream. And you totally just messed up the entire experience for me.
Start over. I want my money back.
I really am like, I went and asked for a bowl. She picks up a bowl, drops it on the floor, picks it back up and hands it to me.
Oh, no.
And
That's
I'm
not
like,
good.
I just can't even eat the ice cream now. Like, I'm so grossed out.
I need to go to a different ice cream shop. Just throw this one away.
So there's just, that's the gross factor. That's a whole different category than being offended.
Mm-hmm.
But there was one time that my back had gone out, and I was in severe pain. Well, the doctor that I went to, actually in Nashville, thought that I was a drug seeker.
Oh.
I don't know why, but apparently I fit the profile. And
you were kind of strung out. All your kids were young, Mindy.
I tell you what, yeah, the kids were little. And so he told me to lay down on the table. I could barely lay down. Like once you get in one position when your back is out, you stay.
Mm-hmm.
So he had me lay down and then he said, okay, get up. And he was rude. I mean, he was flat out rude. And I was tearing and I couldn't get myself up off the table. And he acted like I was the biggest baby, that I was putting on a show. Because if I'm in pain, I'm legitimately in pain. If I have come to you, I don't like to be perceived as weak. So even when I was in labor with all 4 kids, there were a couple of different times that nurses didn't believe me till they hooked me up to the machine. I have a high tolerance for pain. And then I also don't like to be perceived as weak. So again, that's where it's like, just hook me up to the machine. You'll see I'm in active labor. And then they're like scrambling to get the doctor. But it just, there's situations like that, those really do offend me. I'm like, I'm really not a baby. I really have come to the end of myself and I'm asking you for help.
Well, and I think that fits the category of being misunderstood too. That's, not being heard or feeling like people are listening. That's
right. Well, I don't like these personal questions, Julie, but I asked my kids what they thought offends me.
That was brave.
I know. But I do think that probably one of the easiest ways, and when I think of offend, in the traditional sense, it's like we get kind of hurt and taken aback and maybe huffy over it. And when people criticize Northerners, I get offended.
Right.
And it just, I can feel my blood pressure rise. I get so angry. And I try to say like, okay, this person doesn't know what they're talking about. Just ignore it, Marie. And I do that better with strangers. But like if somebody that I think we were having a relationship or I thought they liked me and they say something, I have a really hard time letting that go. And, I have to work on that. And it actually did happen this month. And I did a little bit better with letting it pass through me. But I do think that is a sign that you truly are offended if all the emotion of that comes back, like the hurt feelings, the feeling excluded, the feeling criticized, the unfair stereotyping, like just if all that comes back to you just in one instance of memory, then you know that you really were offended. But kind of a funny one that my kids said was when people criticize, they said anything. When people criticize anything that I love, I get offended.
Okay.
I'm offended on behalf of that person. I'm offended for myself. I'm offended, like, don't criticize things that I love. My son-in-law brought this up. A few months ago, I felt like the family was criticizing my dog a lot. And you guys know that I've really enjoyed my dog this year.
Yes.
And I just couldn't take one more backhanded criticism of her. It wasn't like super overt, but I sensed the criticism in the room. And I told people they better cut it out right now. And so my son-in-law brings that up and we laugh about it because I did overreact. But on behalf of things that I love, I get worked up. Do you guys ever find that?
You've been teased a lot about Miss Clara there. So
yeah. What's there to criticize about Clara?
Well, she's not perfect, but nobody is.
Yeah, pets are a sensitive issue. Yeah. And you can criticize all you want, but nobody else can.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I can criticize my kids, but let someone else criticize my kid?
No.
No.
Yeah. Nope.
No, it's like the rules. You can criticize your sibling, but if anyone else does, you'll fight them to the death.
That's right. Yeah. That's what I'm talking about.
I like what the genie told Darby about, like, when you let it pass through, or when you don't let it pass through and you let it land, you're just suffering more. You're suffering from the offense, and then you're suffering from all that, like you said, the anger, the resentment, the high blood pressure, the heart rate going up. Like you're just adding to your own. Whereas if you just let it go,
Well, I was going to say, but it kind of sort of falls into that mindset of, how like when your husband says, just relax. Oh, nothing's going to offend you more in that moment. And it's kind of like the offend thing too. Like you're like, just let it pass by. But if it was that easy for people, that's why we need the book, because we can't just say, I'm going to let it pass by. We really have to do maybe some work on that.
Well, just realizing it's a choice, I think, is kind of mind blowing. Like you kind of just feel entitled to the offense. You
do.
Right.
You do feel entitled. You feel like you have the right to be offended. Everybody else is offended. I get to hear about that. So why can't I be offended about some things? But don't you notice, like, even if you feel like you're over it, it's in the quiet of the night or the quiet of the morning when those things come and haunt your brain again. And you're like, this is actually affecting me. And that's when I know I have not dealt with this properly.
So listeners, if there's some instances in your life that are coming to your mind where you've been offended, those can be hard to work on. But some of the things that we're going to talk about today will hopefully help with that. Julie, you mentioned the author's strategy to see the offense as a dart coming to you, but not let the offense land. Why don't you explain a little bit about more what she was talking about with that?
Yeah, she said to be like smoke and let the dart of the offense just pass right on through you. Don't let it stick. Don't let it land. In other words, she says we have a choice to not be offended. And I think that's easier for some things than others, But it is a good visual. I like visuals. And it's helpful to just think, okay, it is a dart, recognize it is an offense. I don't think we're denying that. She's not asking you to say it doesn't, it didn't happen. It's not real, but I'm just not going to let it affect me the way I used to. I'm not going to let it make me miserable, and I'm not going to ruminate. And so this week, kind of as a way to put it into real terms, like, well, what does it mean to pass through? So I would kind of talk through things like, okay, could that person have meant it differently than I interpreted it? Maybe they just don't understand. Maybe they just don't know how to say it any differently, or they didn't mean it that way, or just could I give them the benefit of the doubt, or what were they dealing with at the time? Like that lady at the store, maybe that was her 100th question about something, or who knows what, trying to put it into those perspectives. Like, yes, it still was rude of her and offensive, but I don't have to let it ruin my life.
Yeah, one thing that helps me is when I remember the times that I've put my foot in my mouth when I've offended someone, and probably times that I've offended people and I don't even realize it. Like I don't even know about the time that I've offended them. How would I want them to feel about it? I would love it if they could let it pass through, or give me the benefit of the doubt, or say that maybe she just didn't understand or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
Because until you experience something, you really don't know what offends you about that until you're in that position. Like I may have teased large families in the past that had a bunch of kids, like as a joke, like it was no big deal. Well, those large families are getting jokes from absolutely everybody on the street. So, like when it was my turn with all the kids, I was like, oh, I'm actually kind of tired of hearing that. Like you,
Right.
Marie, with the northern thing. So yeah, I think there's some things people don't really mean anything by. It's just a typical thing they joke about, right? Like they're just like, oh, that's an acceptable thing to tease about, joke about. But you don't know, like, that person, anyways, they may have heard that 100 times that day.
Yeah. It is hard. It's so easy to look at what someone else is offended by and say,
right,
oh, they should have just brushed that off. You know what I'm saying? Like, oh,
because you don't find it.
Yeah, you might say, oh, big deal. But you don't know, like, the background or how many times they've heard it or why it hurts their feelings. Like, I think a lot of times if we can know why that hurts someone's feeling, like the thoughts and feelings that go through your mind when people are making a lot of jokes about large families, people might not even like I can understand what you might be thinking and how you're feeling, but other people, they might not even be able to imagine what you might be thinking or feeling.
Right.
Yeah. I'm thinking of somebody who is bald, and there's just all kinds of jokes like that people think are funny, and I think, gosh, that isn't. I don't think that would bother me, like, as a man, to be bald. Like, it looks good,
Right.
But they're like, when you've heard it over and over and over again, and I didn't expect this person to ever be offended by anything, but they're like, it just gets old.
It gets old.
Yeah.
I was going to say the same thing, Julie, that physical attributes, especially that you cannot change. My sons are very tall, and people see that as a blessing, and it's the first thing they notice about them. So every time they meet someone, wow, you're so tall. Well, my 8th grader, when he was in 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, like, you're at such a malleable emotional state.
You don't want to be off the curve at all.
And you're always hearing, oh, you're so tall, you're so tall, you're so tall. I thought you were in high school, oh, like, are you sure you're only 12 or 13 or 14? And he was very self-conscious. Like, all of my boys have gone through a self-conscious stage until they learn to embrace just who they are and they get comfortable in their own skin. Well, if you can't change something about your like, those physical makeup things should not be commented on.
Yeah, exactly. I totally understand what your boys went through, because being a girl and being tall, like in the 8th grade, 9th grade, I was, way above everybody else.
Yep.
And I had family members, that maybe I would only see at Christmas or whatever. And they'd say, well, how tall are you going to get?
Yep.
And I wanted to say, I don't know. I'm a freak of nature. Maybe I'll be 8 feet tall. Like, I just wanted to say something like, you realize what you're saying? Like, I kind of got used to it, and I actually like being tall. Yeah. But it's just so offensive to criticize something that you can do nothing about.
Right. Well, how are forgiveness and not being offended close cousins?
I think this maybe goes with bigger offenses, not like the mulch lady in the store or the just little things, but like people that you really want to stay in relationship with. Like in the book, Darby is complaining about her unreasonable sister. Like, she's always making unreasonable demands on her. And she, I think in the story, it's to bake a birthday cake. And she feels like her sister never reciprocates. It's all one-sided, like demand. And, she said when she learned to let things pass through, that helped her not to fall into self-pity. Then she could quarantine those thoughts. These are all things we've learned in past lessons. And that can lead you to problem solve. Like, I think if you get stuck in self-pity, you're never going to get to the problem solving. Right. So she gives her sister like some parameters, like, yes, I'd love to help. I'd love to bake this cake, but I can do it between these hours. I can do it this day, or I can do it if you can do all the shopping and have the stuff here. Like, she gave her some responsibility too, because she decided, yes, this relationship is important. I do care about my sister and my niece, but this is kind of my compromise. And I thought that was good. Like, she came up with a workable solution, and she couldn't help if the sister refused it. It was in her court then. But had she not done that, I think she would have just grown to resent her sister. She also uses the analogy of forgiveness. She says, empty the boxes of their offenses. Like you're turning the box, you've collected them all, and it's like you're emptying it. I thought that was a good picture too.
Like when we talked about loving people well, like that's part of 1 Corinthians 13 is love keeps no record of wrongs. And that is so hard because especially, if you've known someone a long time and you've not forgiven along the way, that just adds up.
Yeah.
That's no way to have a relationship.
Yeah. Well, are any of these rooms, like the anger or the fear or the worry or the offended state, are they like default modes written in the software of your mind? Do you find yourself just immediately jumping to them?
I'm just going to be very honest. And with certain situations and people, yes. And I don't like that about myself. And it's something that I cannot just say that's just the way I am or that's just the way our relationship is. I can't stay there. It really does need to be fixed. But unfortunately, there are certain people and situations that get me hot really fast.
Yeah, it is almost like a little neural software pathway. It's like, darn, how did that jump from there to there so fast? It's like a well-worn track or something.
Well-worn path, baby.
Yeah, it is, literally.
Yeah.
I would say fear is a default for me. I can kind of project situations and outcomes into things that may never happen, and I can play those over on an endless loop in my mind. And it's like, there's no way out and I can't see how this could ever turn out like I want it to or whatever. And that's just where I have to just step back. It's like, okay, trust. I have to trust that I don't have to see the answer to know that there could be one.
Well, let's take a little bit deeper look at anger and resentment. Like, what's at the root of these? Sometimes you feel like some people are like just angry people. And I know like there's certain times of the month where I'm just can be an angry person. I think all women experience that. But do you consider yourselves like, is it easy to make you angry?
I don't think I'm an angry person. No, I don't. I'm not saying I never get angry. I'm just saying that's not my go-to root emotion.
Right.
But I do get angry, and things that make me angry are being misunderstood. I think because she says get anger is just blocked goals. Like you're not getting something you want, or you've gotten something you don't want.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's not something I feel like I go to immediately.
Right. Yeah. I don't feel like I'm an angry person. The kids joke that when I get angry, watch out. It's taken me a long time to get there. It's taken a lot to get me there. And I do feel that I have parameters on my anger. I'm able to kind of take a breath, step back, not yell right away. But definitely if I'm being taken advantage of, I think that is something that can get me hot, and I will quickly put a squash on that. And I have a hard time controlling sometimes the words that come out when I do feel taken advantage of.
Right.
So again, just being honest.
I asked my kids again, like, well, what do you think makes me angry? Because sometimes it's hard. I think it's kind of funny to think what they say. So the first thing one of my teenagers says was when they ask me what's for lunch. And that is true. I've kind of like laid down, don't ever ask me that question again. I don't want to answer that question. I feel like after all these years of parenting, you figure out what you want for lunch. And I have actually gotten angry that people continue to ask me what's for lunch when I've so clearly said I'm off lunch duty. I don't ever want to hear that question again. But I had actually forgotten that. Like I never thought
they remembered.
I never thought that was going to like come to their mind.
For lunch.
Yeah. But my daughter brought up the being misunderstood. I don't like it when I don't have a chance to explain myself or when the other person won't acknowledge what I'm saying. Maybe I came to the wrong conclusion, but they won't acknowledge why I came to the wrong conclusion. Like they won't acknowledge any validity to any part of what I'm saying. That is frustrating, Julie, probably because it is blocking a goal of being understood. Like, I'm even willing to recognize like when I'm wrong, but I hate it when someone else won't understand why I thought it was right.
Yeah, and that's who I'm married to, so I get that.
Oh, you are? Okay.
Yeah, John, I would say John has more anger than I do, and it's always not at what I think. It's never like at me. It's like a blocked goal of being misunderstood or just wanting me to see something from his perspective, not even agree with it. Like,
right.
It's not that I have to agree with it. He goes, just see it. Just acknowledge it.
Just acknowledge that that's a perspective that someone could have.
Yeah.
I don't know why that's so important to John and I. It just really is.
And why it took, years and years for me to figure that out.
Yeah. Another thing they said makes me angry is wasting my money. Or wasting any kind of resources. Waste makes me angry. Like, I don't know why that.
Time.
Yeah, I don't know why that makes me angry. But stupid, arbitrary rules, like things that don't make sense to me, make me angry. Like, I'm willing to follow a rule if I see a purpose and it, carries out over time. If it seems arbitrary or stupid to me, it just makes me angry. And so, like, I don't know, I just thought it was interesting. Kind of ask the people around you what makes you angry, and you might find out a little bit about what they see.
Oh my goodness.
But Abigail said the angriest she's ever seen me get is when the kids used to spill their milk and it would pour in between that crack in the dining room table and leak out onto the floor. And she said, Mom, that would be like the angriest you ever get. And it's true. I don't know who made up that expression, don't cry over spilled milk, but I literally want to cry over spilled milk because you're going to spend a lot of time trying to get that out of every groove, and it's going to stink. And, it doesn't matter where they spill it, in the car, wherever. Yeah. Milk is a mess to clean up.
Yes. Oh my goodness.
My mom and I were just laughing about that the other day. She still remembered this car that she used to have, and it was pretty new. And Andrew handed her his cup of chocolate milk in the car, and the lid wasn't on. And he just kind of let it go, like, like, here, Nano. And she didn't have it. And that milk stayed in the floorboard of that car until they got rid of it.
Oh, my goodness.
It's just hard to get it all up. Like, you can mop it up, sop it up, but some of it's going to stay behind, and it stinks. So
it's weird. Almost some of those little things can make me angrier than like a big issue.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, they're constant. They're always happening.
Well, that's true.
Yes.
That's true. All right. Did we already talk about what makes you angry, Mindy?
I did say when I am taken advantage of.
Oh, okay. So do not take advantage. Don't spill milk at my house, and don't take advantage of Mindy.
Listen, I feel like I have a servant's heart until I'm expected to do it.
Okay.
Like, let me serve you, but don't expect me to do this level all the time.
Right.
Like, accept my kindness, but stop expecting, me to live my life for you.
It's
I am not.
Gift, not a right.
Thank you.
It's that entitlement again.
Right. All right. Well, let's talk about worry, which is so much more socially acceptable than anger and offense. Anyone's willing to talk about what they worry about because you're not going to be criticized over that.
Right.
But how do you know that you've crossed the line from concerns into worry? Because a lot of times we do start out telling ourselves, well, I'm just a little concerned about this. Anybody would be. But how do we know when we've really moved into worry?
Yeah, we easily couch it as concern. Like, it makes us a good person to be concerned.
Yes.
But I know it's worry when the worrisome thoughts are on an endless loop. Just playing, and they're just amplifying. Each situation just gets more complicated and darker and bigger, and so that's when I know. And then I do start to feel it physically.
Yes, I can physically feel worry. Like, my stomach hurts, my head hurts. I want to take a nap so I can turn my mind off.
Yeah.
Right. If you're losing sleep, if it's again kind of the litmus test of in the quiet of the night, first thing in the morning, first thing on your mind, then I know that, okay.
Mm-hmm.
So this last week, this is the only thing I'm thinking about in the morning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, what have you guys done about worry in light of what we've been reading in the book? Like, are there any new strategies that you've put into practice?
Yeah, just kind of moving into the other room has been helpful. And for listeners that maybe don't know what that is, it's like we can only think one thought at a time. And so to get your thoughts somewhere else, it may just seem like a distraction at first. It may be making a grocery list or looking at a magazine. But if you can just stop those thoughts, and then you can replace those thoughts with something more positive or different or helpful. And that has, I find myself, I'm not saying I'm never worry or never have negative thoughts, but I have found myself trying to do that. And not just letting those thoughts run wild and have their own way in my head,
Right.
Yeah. It's helpful to me if I can write them down, because then it's like moving them out of my head. It's also helpful to me if I can say them out loud to someone, because sometimes our worries sound a lot more awful in our own minds. And if we can say them out loud, it kind of takes a little bit of their power away.
I totally agree with both of you. I have to actually decide to look at it in the face and look at it head on, like shine a spotlight on it and actually deal with it, because so often the worry is just ruminating and I ignore stuff, like don't pay attention. Don't, act like it's not there. It's there. And when I finally decide to deal with it, that's when I'm writing it down, or that's when I'm giving it to the Lord actively, and I call it what it is. I call it by its name, because before I do that, I'm just, I don't know what to do with it. I'm trying to ignore it and make, thinking it's going to go away. Well, I finally have to deal with it head on. Before it will finally subside.
Yeah. I do find out, Mindy, like you, like a lot of worry, I start out with it in the back of my mind. I try not to think about it. I try my best to bury it, stay busy, do anything but think about that worry. Then all of a sudden it's all I can think about.
Right. Well, and then you can develop strategies. You're like, is this really going to happen? If it does, or I ask me, what's the worst that could happen? Can I deal with that? You know what I mean? Like, what are the ramifications of the worst thing that could happen? I'm like,
I liked this. She added something a little new in this chapter was, is my worry solvable? And if so, then you have permission to think about, like, brainstorm, research, think, take some action, talk it over with somebody who might be able to help you.
Right.
And then if it's not solvable, then acceptance is your only other alternative. And I thought that was really important.
Right. Well, she does give some strategies for talking about anxiety, and I don't really consciously do this, but she says that one of the suggestions is exercise. And I do think sometimes, if you go for a walk or get outside of the place that you're worrying, that can really help. Sometimes if I'm worrying and I go to like my boot camp, I'm still worrying about that thing while I'm doing my exercise.
Right.
Which is a terrible feeling.
It is terrible.
But it does help you to maybe get outside your house.
Yeah.
Yes, outside in nature. And if you're walking, maybe talking with somebody, just like we've talked over and over again, just hearing you say it, sometimes you realize it's not as big as you thought it was, or you've spoken the answer, like the answers come out, what you should do about it. And prayer, of course.
Right.
Should be the first thing, but sometimes it's not always the first thing we go to.
Right. If we're still in the phase where we're not even willing to name it or look at it or think about it, I find I can't pray about it either.
Yeah, you don't know how.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm still trying to even admit that I am worrying.
I literally go from ignoring, stuffing, act like it's not there to, all right, it's time to deal with it. But the in between is torture. And then I think, why did I wait so long to get to actually dealing with this? I could have saved myself, a week of torture.
Right.
But I will say, there have been situations where I talk about walking and praying a lot. And sometimes there's just different scenarios. And I think I would have a really hard time pinpointing what needs what. But sometimes I need to walk with a friend. Sometimes I need to walk by myself. And sometimes I need to lock myself away on my back porch outside, but by myself and sit and be quiet. And it's just, I kind of go between those three scenarios as to depending on what the situation is and what I'm feeling like I need to do.
Mm-hmm. Julie, you have been through this book a couple times, and this is Mindy and my first time through it. Do you feel like you've gotten more of a handle on worry? Because I would say, from the subtitle, Women Learning the Secrets to Overcome Discouragement and Worry, one of the reasons that subtitle is attractive to people is because so many people struggle with it. So do you feel better equipped now? I mean, no one's going to be perfect, but.
Yeah, I do think the book's purpose is to give you tools. Like she says in this chapter that worry is not caused by your circumstances, but your response to them. It's your thinking about them. So just like every other negative emotion. So it's definitely giving me tools, first of all, to recognize that I'm even doing it and that I have an option, and then what to do next. And so that is, those reminders, come up often. It's like, I'm not just on autopilot, running into self-pity, running into worry, running into anxiety. Like, I have a choice. What am I going to do?
And I did want to say, she did point out that, we are talking about these issues pretty quickly. And, you can catch that there's a lot of deeper things going on as we talk about it. However, in a book, she mentions, we really can get lost in some of these emotions for years. These are well-worn pathways that can truly steal your life. They can steal your joy. They can steal your relationships if we allow these things that we really can laugh about on the surface, but they can genuinely steal everything that you value.
Yeah. She says over and over again, you are just on the start. If you're going through this book and trying to change your thinking, you are just at the beginning. Like, mastery of anything, playing the piano, learning a sport, art takes 5 years, at least. So don't expect to just make a total turnaround, but you're on the right path. You are catching yourself. Like, I find I have a dialogue in my head now. Instead of just spiraling down, I know what to say to myself. Like, no, I've got this choice. I can do this, or reframe this, refute this. Like, it's definitely giving me the tools. And then I still have to choose to use them.
Right. And this may even change your closest relationships, because these are not popular things to necessarily implement into your life. If you have that friend that's kind of what you talk about, are all the bad things, or you talk about all of the offenses. Like, we have all had times or people that it's like, I don't know why, but every time I'm with this person, like, all we talk about are ways that we have been offended, and so you'll start to gravitate as you change, yourself, and you surrender these things about yourself. You may notice that you might gravitate towards other people that are similarly trying to forgive. They're trying to move on. They're trying to not be offended or stay there. Not talking bad about situations or people, and again, it's just, this can really change your whole life.
Yeah, she does mention in this chapter with Darby, I think, had a very offensive boss that criticized her and really was offensive. And And so Darby kind of questioned, like, am I supposed to just take that? And she said, that's when she said, by letting those offenses pass through you, you're going to reduce your suffering. But at the same time, her problem solving led her to leave that job. You know what I mean? Like, that wasn't a good place to stay. Like, once again, we're never advocating staying in a toxic environment or relationship or abusive and just say, well, I'm letting it pass through. That's not what we're talking about.
Right.
But I think just freeing you up from the resentment and the rumination so you can move on. Like, maybe some friendships you don't need to keep, because they're not healthy or whatever, or, but at least it lets you evaluate that. And I think the next chapter is on relationships.
Okay.
Right. So much to learn and do in this book. And we are going to have Julie Gordon on the podcast after we are done reading this book. And maybe we can have listeners, write in some of their questions. Or I just know, like, from the beginning till now, it's hard to remember all the things you're doing, all the things you're supposed to be doing. But I guess just it boils down to you're supposed to be thinking of things in a different way. And nobody comes to changing something that big easily. It takes time. And
I don't know about you girls, but I'm still stuck on my genius zone.
I know.
I haven't made much progress on
I don't know. I still don't know if I have one.
So if you're listening for the first time today, you'll definitely want to go back and, listen to our other Happy School book episodes, because we have talked a lot about different things that are applicable to everyday life, and we're working on them just like listeners are working on them. But before we go, we want to do I'm a Fan. All right, Mindy, what are you a fan of this week?
Okay, it is almost summer, ladies, and so we all will need to have a bathing suit.
Ooh.
And I am a huge fan of two places. I'm actually going to have two I'm a fans today because I love to mix and match these pieces.
Okay.
Kalia Swimwear at Dick's Sporting Goods is a very nice, well-made brand of swimwear that I have found some pieces that I love. So you pay a little bit more, but these are quality pieces. And women of all sizes, there are great different options in the Kalia brand for swimwear. So that's my first recommendation. My second is Target swimwear because I personally love to get like more quality bottoms, and I can go cheaper on the tops. Now that's just the way that I'm made. I happen to be bigger on the bottom than I am on the top. Now women, with a larger chest may find that the Kalia top would be better and they could go eat, you know what I mean? I just feel like I was able to put together some swim options for myself between Kalia and Target. And I am so thrilled. I feel like I'm ready for the summer.
Yay.
Between those two places. So I just if I can help any women out there get their swimwear in line, I went to those two stores and I was set, y'all. I'm ready. Let's go.
Good to go. And like I said last week, you need to take that swimsuit with you everywhere you go.
Yes. When you said that, Julie, I was like, oh, okay.
Swimwear is so hard for women. I mean, we joke about it, but it truly is hard. And you wouldn't think so, because I walk into Target and there must be 300 swimsuit choices there. But
I had to mix around with sizes. I'm not that big on the top, but I had to find a size large top, and I was like surprised. I would have never. And then Abby told me, "Oh, Mom, I had to size up in that brand at Target." I'm like, "Oh, I never would." I was like, it just doesn't feel right, And
I feel like size never really mattered in bathing suits. Like you could be way off.
Yes. But ladies, it's worth the effort. Make sure you have a swim piece to wear this summer so you can truly live your life.
Thank you, Mindy. All right, Julie, what are you a fan of this week?
All right, I've been doing a lot of planting flowers around my patio and front porch and stuff, and in pots. And I'm a fan of a fern. It's called a Kimberley Queen fern. I know everybody probably already knows about these, but I just thought I'd mention it because right now the Boston ferns are real common in all the stores, and I had trouble finding these Kimberley queens, but they love full sun. So you can just set them out full sun. I don't even know if I water mine in the summer. Like we get enough rain that I don't have to, but they are drought resistant and they will grow until, like, I usually have to throw them out at Christmas because they don't go with my Christmas decor.
Oh, that's so good to know.
Awesome.
Yeah, they're just hardy. But if you have a Boston fern, they require shade. They tend to drop their leaves and turn brown, and they're a little bit more.
Yeah, I always think of ferns as fussy plants, but that's probably because of the Boston ones.
Yeah, and so the Boston, kind of drapes over. The Kimberley look more straight up.
Oh,
Once they get bigger, they do start to fall over, but they have a more straight up appearance.
Okay.
And you just have to look at the tag there. It's really hard to tell the difference by the leaf, but just look for the tag.
Okay, good to know. Well, I'm a fan of something that on the surface is boring, but I found out about it when I went for my eye exam. So a lot of people in midlife really don't need glasses, but they need reading glasses. And that's kind of where I am. Like, I don't need glasses all the time, but I do need reading glasses. And if you want to get progressives that are kind of blank at the top, but then reading, the eye doctor said, well, those will run you probably about $800. And I'm like, I'll guarantee lose those the next day. So then the tech that was doing my eye exam, she goes, you could go on Amazon and just get progressive reading glasses. And she goes, that's what I used for years. And so I did. I went on Amazon, and you can they don't have as many choices as just regular reading glasses, but they do have some choices where it's kind of like the bottom part is the +1 or the +2 or whatever you need. And then the top part is more blank. And so I find that I can look up, and I'm not sometimes it's a little disorienting to look up with your reading glasses on, but I find I can look up in these. So I will put a link to the ones that I got on Amazon in our show notes. And also they may lead you to some other ones where you might like the frames better or something like that.
Yeah.
Oh, great tip.
I know I'll eventually have to break down and buy the more expensive ones, but I'm not quite there yet.
Not today.
So, all right, listeners, well, we hope that you have enjoyed this episode and learned something from our Happy School book. Come and find us on Instagram at Midlife Matters Podcast, or email us at midlifematterspodcast@gmail.com. Julie and Mindy, we will keep working. Next month, I think we finish up the book. And like you said, we're going to be talking about relationships. So we have some more work to do this month.
Yeah. Keep up the good work.
Woo-hoo. All right. We'll talk to you guys next week.
Sounds great. Bye.
We're so happy you joined us today. You can find the show notes for this episode at midlifematterspodcast.com. Also, please tell a friend about the show and help them hit the free subscribe button on their favorite podcast app. Be sure to follow us on Instagram at Midlife Matters Podcast. That's where we post pictures and stories about all the things we talk about in each episode. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.